Brothers and sisters, welcome. Welcome to memorial and remembrance of Sister Lila May Allen Cook. And I'm Bishop Fryer, and I'll be conducting the services today. Presiding here at the services is President David Christensen from our stake presidency. We do want to acknowledge Brother Dan Cook, who gave us the family prayer today. And we also want to recognize Brother Kurt Olson, who is doing the prelude and postlude music. We will begin and we'll have an opening prayer by Brother Ryan Cook, one of Lila's grandsons.
Our dear, kind Heavenly Father, we are so very grateful to be here today, surrounded by loved ones and surrounded by the love that we have for our Grandma Cook. We are so very grateful to be able to celebrate her life and her legacy today, and the wonderful many years that we've been able to spend with her and learning from her. We are so very grateful for all of the things that she's taught us, and the legacy that she has left, to work through pain and trial with humor and jokes, and to love unconditionally. We are so very grateful for this opportunity that we have to be here. We ask that you please bless us with thy Spirit to feel comfort and peace. We ask that you please bless Grandma, that she can be without pain. And we are so very grateful for those that have showed an outpouring of love for our family, from ward members to those from the nursing home. We are very thankful. We are very grateful at this time for an opportunity that we have to say goodbye. We love thee. We love our grandma, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Cook. We'll go ahead and begin the services with a musical selection, Families Can Be Together Forever, by the Harmon family, and they will be accompanied by Sister Amy Harmon. And then after which we'll hear from Brother Bob Cook, one of Lila's sons, and then we'll have another musical selection by Shay King entitled Peace in Christ. And then I will give some remarks and we'll proceed to that point. Brothers and sisters, I'm sorry. I skipped over Brother Alan Cook. I'm sorry. So we'll start with Brother Alan.
Well, I thought that was the end of the program. I took the assignment of doing a little bit of a sketch of Mom's life. And I see that I'm speaking to family members mainly. And so I think some of these things you're going to know, and maybe some you won't know, but things that I remember. There's not a way to really look things up. So a lot of things are things that I observed, especially after I was born. The things happened before I was born too. So Mom was born in 1924. 1924 is an interesting time. That's 64 years after the very first pioneers came to Hiram. They came to an area there of ground that was just an ground, 23 wagons, 23 families. Two of those families are direct ancestors of Mom's. That was 64 years before her birth. So there was nothing there, but in 64 years they had built Hiram to where Mom was born. When Grandma and Grandpa bought their house, it had already been built. So it was older than they didn't build the house, so it was an older home. It had adobe walls, and it was nice. It was comfortable in the summer. It was cool, and it was a nicely built home. It's still there. It's a nice home. But there's some things that it didn't have, and Mom experienced some changes. During her lifetime, just until she graduated from high school, this is what was happening in the world, I guess. They had the roaring 20s right during her first birth, and then they had the Depression, and then they had World War II. And all of those things happened before Mom graduated from high school. And she was living there in Hiram. Things that she particularly had when she was young, her grandma Allen came to visit. Her grandma Nielsen came to visit, and she followed her home. Grandma Nielsen lived by the square in Hiram, and she walked behind her as she walked home. And as they walked past the Lincoln School, the kids were singing inside. They were singing a song, Santa Lucia. And by the time they got to her grandma's house, Mom went to the piano and played Santa Lucia at 4 years old, which was quite a remarkable thing. And I have no idea how that can possibly happen without any training and without training with the piano or the music, but she played it. And ever since then, whenever we wanted her to play the piano, she'd ask us what we wanted to hear, and we could name the tune, and she would play it. If she'd heard it before, she'd play it, which is a remarkable thing. Also, at 4 years old, she was in the kitchen, and somehow they were cooking potatoes, and she probably got in close, and they spilled on it. Anyway, the potato water got spilled on her chest and burned her quite seriously, and left a scar that she still has today. So that was a problem that she had it for her. But she was not worried about that so much. Her grandpa was worried about it, Grandpa Nielsen, and he gave her a sucker, a special sucker with a chicken type sucker, fed in the form of a chicken, and she thought she was loved by her grandpa. That's what she got from that experience. When she was baptized, still wasn't that far away from the pioneers, but they did have the temple built. And so the baptismal font was in the temple. And so for her baptism, they took her to the temple, and she went in, and she was baptized by the workers that were working in the temple of the baptistry, and then came out. So there was not a group of people that went in, but just basically her, maybe one other person that, for her, I can't remember. I think they might have almost dropped her off, got her baptized, and then took her out. So that was a different type of baptism. But that was a great improvement over her mother's baptism, because she was baptized in a river in the winter, like this, and it was cold. And so that was a big difference. When Mom was about 16, her grandfather died, and he distributed his property. He gave each one of his sons a farm, and he gave his daughters an inheritance, and they got enough inheritance for Grandma's house, my grandma, that they got indoor plumbing. That was quite an improvement. So that's the first time that they had indoor plumbing in the house. And that started some other improvements. But Mom was so excited about the indoor plumbing, and she wanted to be a modern person, so she went out and tipped over the outhouse. And some of the family were disappointed in that because they thought it still had some useful years, but it was gone because of Mom. During the Depression, they were, all of the time that they were there on the farm, they got most of their living off the 10 acres on which they lived. They had a big garden, and they had I'm getting old enough I can't remember all the words. They had fruit trees and things there, and they had animals, so they had most of their food that they could produce themselves. But some of the clothes they had to go and buy, but as long as they had to buy some flour, they packed them in flour sacks that had red rose on, I think, and some other things. They were made of material that were pretty nice. And so they made flour sack underwear. And I always joked with Mom that she had flour sack underwear, but she thought it was pretty good. She thought they were pretty good underwear. Her mother made them, and then she did a good job. When she was growing up, in high school, the junior prom. During that night, they chose the junior prom queen during the dance. And those that were there cast their votes, and they counted them up, and then they announced the junior prom queen. And she was competing against somebody that sounded pretty cute to me. They called her, what? Cubby Bear. Yeah, that sounds like a cute name. She must have been a cute girl, Cubby Bear. But when they counted the votes, Mom won. She was the junior prom queen. And she was a beautiful young lady, and I'm just joking. I think she would have won anyway because she's a beautiful girl. She also, around the high school time and getting a little bit older, she had a boyfriend. And the boyfriend, she really liked him and he was on the way, but then World War II came. And they called these boys out to the war. And a lot of boys went, and his boyfriend went also. And a lot of boys didn't come back, and this boy didn't come back either. And so that was something that happened to Grandma too. Her first job after graduating from high school was to work for the telephone company. And that was a good invention too. And not everybody had a phone in their house, but most people did by then. But in order to use it, you had to ring the operator. You couldn't call somebody directly. You had to have the operator involved. And that was Mom's job. She was the operator. She would connect people in town to their calls. And then there was a special ring that they'd have because when people had a telephone in their house, they had it on the same line as a number of other people. So they had a party line. And so other people were using the same line, and each line had their own ring. So they could tell who the phone call was for. And if you wanted to, you could pick up the phone and listen to the conversation and learn what other people were talking about. So that's the way the phone worked. If they made a call to Logan, from Hiram to Logan, that was long distance. And it cost an extra fee to call long distance. And so for years and years, now nobody even remembers the word long distance, but years and years, they'd say, oh, it's long distance. And everybody dropped what they were doing and go to the phone because they knew that somebody on the other end was paying an extra fee to make that call. But today, we can just make calls everywhere and it's no extra cost, no fee. But everything needed to be taken care of, and that was Mom's job. She had to work the full year, she said. The first year, she couldn't go to college. The next year, they changed her schedule so she could work at night and go to college during the day. And she eventually had 2 years of school, maybe a little bit more. Then she met Dad, and I don't know how that happened. I didn't get the information, but they were married in June of 1946, and I was born in July of 1947. So I began their life as a father and mother. They went on to have 4 children. Things didn't work out very well with Dad and Mom, and it came time for Mom that she felt she needed to have a divorce, and that was something that changed her life. That was kind of a pivotal point, not only in her life, but in my life too, because a divorce was a hard thing in a family. It was a hard thing for me. So when she did it, she was worried because Dad wanted to have the children, and she wanted to have the children, and I was the child. I was the one that everybody wanted. That's a surprise. She went to court, and we had a few people here from the ward, not a lot, but a few, and she appreciated the support she got from the ward. She was living here in the ward, and I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to say that I believe Mom was the longest person that ever lived in this ward. The reason I say that is because we bought one of the first houses that was built on Hillcrest Avenue. I remember lots of empty lots there when I was growing up. But before we did that, we lived in a place called City Housing. And anybody here remember City Housing? I do. I remember living there. And City Housing was where the tennis court is, next to the cemetery, between there and the Quonset hut. That was City Housing, and that's where we lived, and we went to church in this ward, because that was in this ward, in the Quonset hut, and other people went to the Quonset hut for church too. That's where we went when we lived in city housing before the houses were built. So I think Mom was probably the one. Then we bought the house and lived there, so she kept to live there all of her life. So I think she probably lived in the ward longer than any other person. But she really appreciated the ward's help when she went for the divorce. She had to go to court, and she was afraid to go by herself and be there and try to represent herself as being the one to have the children. But members of the ward came, quite a few, and she said they were prominent people in the town. And she was appreciated very much, always did appreciate the health and strength the Lord gave her that day when she went to court to get her children during the divorce. So she got the house with a mortgage and got the children with all the problems that we brought with us. And there she was happy. She got what she wanted. The home was important to her, and I think that was wonderful. And it was important to us because as we grew up in the ward here, and we had wonderful neighbors and wonderful people that lived here. We appreciated it very, very much. Such good people built their houses here and moved in. I thought there was an exceptionally high number of college professors, and we had doctors, and we had all kinds of professional people that were very excellent people, and they were our neighbors and ward members. And so we grew up among those people, and guess what? They had children my age. So there were lots of children to play with, lots of things as we grew up, and lots of friends that I made over the years. So it was a wonderful place to grow up and a wonderful place to be. And so I'm grateful for my mother to have the strength to hang on and stay there and hold that home and make it work. There did come a time where I wanted to, I needed to borrow some money. I had someone wanted to sell me a business, but I needed some money to buy it. And I thought I had the equity in some apartments that I had, but I couldn't get it out because you can't borrow 100% of the value of property. So I asked Mom if I could borrow the money on her house. Now, this is the house that she'd struggled with and kept all those years. And it wasn't very hard. She said yes. And so we put a mortgage on the house, another mortgage. Actually, she still had the first mortgage on there. And she still owed $1,500 or something. The way this works, I'm just going to tell you, on your mortgages, if you get a 15-year mortgage, it takes you 10 years to pay half the mortgage, and the last five years pays the balance. If you get a 30-year mortgage, it takes you 25 years to pay the first half of the mortgage, and the last 5 years to pay the mortgage off. So basically, so she still had a little bit of money left on her mortgage when I borrowed the money. And I said, great, I'll pay that off. That's what I did. And she finally got to be debt-free when I borrowed the money on her house. And I paid that off, and I bought the business. It worked very well. And Bob bought the business later, and it worked very well. And so it worked out good. We paid it all off. And so Mom finally had the house without having to make a monthly payment of $62, which was a lot for her. Well, I should say that when the divorce happened, everyone could see that Mom was going to be in trouble. How's she going to be able to pay that $62 a month, take care of the family, and get by in life? And so her brothers and sisters got together and said, let's fix up your basement so you can have an apartment down there. You're close to the university, you can rent it out, that'll give an income for you, a little bit of an income to help you out. And so her brothers and sisters got together, and their brother-in-law came, and he was a contractor, and he finished it off, and she had an apartment in the basement. And that basement apartment became kind of an important thing for her in life. She always, through life, wanted to be a good member of the church, wanted to do her duty, wanted to help. And she was very proud that 2 of her renters joined the church. Through her efforts, I think. I can tell you about one because when I came home from my mission, she had a renter there. And the first thing I did was ask him if he wanted to know about the church. He said no. So we just left him alone. But then a short time later, he decided that he did want to learn something about the church, but he told me he didn't want to have the missionaries come. I said, okay, because I just barely got home from a mission. I had all my missionary materials in my upstairs in my room. So I said, okay. And so twice a week, I went down at 11 o'clock at night and gave them the missionary discussions, the same ones you'd get from the missionaries because I was a missionary. Matter of fact, I looked and my missionary certificate didn't have an expiration date, so I'm still a missionary. Well, he was ready to go to church after the first 2 lessons, and he came here to this ward. And I didn't really see him until he came to church, and I was surprised that he came in shorts and a white t-shirt. I thought that seemed a little unusual. It kind of stuck out, being here in the ward. But he went through all the meetings, and I don't believe anybody said anything to him about what he was wearing. Not a word. And it was 2 weeks after that I baptized him as a member of the church. And I heard a year or two later that they had called him a stake missionary where he lived, and he was a missionary himself, teaching the gospel at his stake. So things were growing, and the church was growing. It came from Mom's basement, from her renting that apartment out. And she was very happy and blessed for doing that. One other thing happened about the time of her divorce. The church required or asked that we pay for a percentage of the building costs. And she received a bill for the building of this building, and she didn't have any money. And she thought about that. I don't know how long she thought about it, but she decided to give what she had, which was her wedding ring. And she donated that to the ward. And it happened that F.C. Needham lived in the ward, and he bought it wholesale and gave him the money. So that turned that into cash very quickly. And that was her contribution for the building fund. She did things with us as I was growing up, and as we had children, she participated in all kinds of things. One of the first things she did is I started raising pigeons in our backyard. And I didn't buy them, I caught them in the barns. And in order to catch pigeons, what we did at night is we went at night and shined flashlights in the eyes of the pigeons so they wouldn't fly away. We'd climb up and then we'd catch them, put them in a gunny sack, and take them home. Well, it's a 2-man job. Somebody's got to hold the flashlight and somebody's got to climb up there and get the pigeon. And I asked Mom if she'd come in and pigeon hunting with me, and she did. She held the flashlight while I caught some pigeons and brought them back. I thought that was quite amazing. And then she always participated in things with hikes and family activities, and very active. She took care of the kids. She had lots of fun things. The kids remember all kinds of fun things she did with Grandma, because she was always doing things with them and helping them. And we always appreciated it because we had needs sometimes for help. And she provided. I thought we stayed here to help her. I thought that was our job. But actually, she was helping us more. She helped us with our family. We had her son Stephen, when he was young, had some epileptic seizures. And a lot of them a day. And my mother took care of him. And his last big seizure happened while she was watching him. We had an ambulance come at that time to take care of him. That's the last one that he had. And but she watched him and did a good job, and he's here today, and he's not having any seizures. So we're glad of that. I was thinking at the end, now we've had our own problems. Our children have had problems. I had problems with a cancer diagnosis this last year and an operation. Took a lot out of me, and then I went to chemotherapy. They told me I better stay away from people because my immune system was down. So I missed seeing Mom personally. I talked to her on the phone, but I couldn't see her. And then it got to the point where I couldn't talk to her on the phone, and she couldn't answer it. And then it got harder and harder, and I felt like, and then I finally got, just in the last recently, I started to go to see her, but in person. But then they were telling me she was going to die. She didn't have much time to live. And I got thinking, it just made me feel so bad, so terrible that I couldn't have another conversation with my mother. And I couldn't do it. And last Thursday, week from yesterday, we went and she said she wanted to draw a ride in the car. And I thought, I can't give her a ride in the car. She can't go in the car. I can't do it. And she sat up in bed. I thought, well, if you can sit up in bed, you know, and we got her out of bed into the wheelchair, and we put on her coat. And I thought, well, maybe one lap around the facility would be enough. So we took her around in the wheelchair and got around to the front door. I thought, well, maybe we can go outside for a minute. We went outside, and she said, where's the car? I said, well, it's right there. She waited and said, okay, and I went and got the car, and we got her out from the wheelchair and into the car, and I took her for a ride, and we went up through the ward, and we're past her old house, and up through the ward here, and around, and took her back, and said, well, we're back, and time to get out of the car. She said, no, I don't want to get out of the car. I want you to take me home. I said, well, we can't take you home. We sold the home. It's not yours anymore. And she said, take me home. Alan can take me home and I can get better. And it just tore my heart. I knew that she's going to go home, and she's going to get better, but I couldn't do it. But we finally got her out and got her in. But as I thought about that, this feeling I had of regrets, not being able to talk to her, I felt like the answer came that I was able to talk to her and my regrets were going. And I felt like I was blessed by having that one last ride with Mom and taking her for a ride. I'm thinking how wonderful it is. And then, guess what? She hadn't been eating and or drinking, and she was expected to die any minute. The next day, last week, on a Friday, I got a call. And it was the nurse, and she was calling for Mom, and she handed the phone to Mom. And Mom said, I need some help. The baby needs formula, and I can't find the diapers. I need help. Come and help me. We said, okay. So Julie and I went down to help her. She was doing things, I guess, people do before they die. She was living in kind of another world. But she spent her time when I thought she could have no energy at all. We had to hold her into bed. About 6 times she tried to get out of bed. She was up and agitated and worried about these babies and about getting them the food and making sure they had diapers, making sure they had a place to sleep, and making sure they had a quilt. She was making a quilt for the babies. And then I realized that in her delirium, the baby she was talking about was me. I was the baby. And she was worried about me and trying to take care of me. And that was quite a tender, tender moment. She was a wonderful mother to me. She was wonderful even in her delirium at the end, not knowing what she was doing, trying to take care of me. It was a great experience to have my mother. I'm grateful for her, and I say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I have a family here on earth. They are so good to me. I want to share my life with them through all eternity. Families can be together forever through heavenly Father. always want to be with my own family. And the Lord has shown me how I can. The Lord has shown me how I can. While I am in my early years, I'll prepare most carefully, so I can marry in God's temple for eternity. Families can be together forever through Heavenly Father's plan. I always want to be with my own family, and the Lord has shown me how I can. The Lord has shown me how I can.
Thank you. That was beautiful. First of all, I'd really like to thank the board for allowing us to come back here for this funeral. As you know, it means a lot to her. When Mom was 94, about 4 years ago, she said that she was 100, but it's a good thing to set a goal. She had some struggles that I could see at 94. She had failing eyesight, and she had memory problems. She had some health problems with her thyroid and problems with, just keeping fed and keeping clean. And about this same time, Alan and Julie were doing everything for her. I mean, they were there every single day and just angels to help her with all of her needs. But Alan felt ill and needed some, he had some heart problems and needed some hospitalization and things like that. And so he gave me a quick call and says, okay, you got Mom. And I have a brother-in-law who's in charge of the nursing home, and I got some advice from him. So I took Mom to the nursing home, and she wasn't happy at all about that. There's one of the 10 commandments says, honor your father and your mother. And it's one of the only commandments that comes with a promise that your days may be long. Now, I'm not so sure that my days will be long, but I know that she cared for her own mother, and her own mother it was necessary that she went to a nursing home as well. And my grandma, Alan, lived to be 1 month away from 100 years old. And then Mom lived to be 1 month away from 99. So that's probably in fulfillment of that promise. But I took her to the nursing home, and almost every day for the next few months after the nursing home, she would say, would have done so. So I worry about that honor clause. If I don't live a long life, it might be because of that. I also wanted to just talk for just a second about a term called inheritance. Inheritance refers to the asset that an individual bequests to their loved ones after they pass away. An inheritance may contain cash, investments, or such things as stocks, bonds, and other assets such as jewelry, automobiles, art, antiques, and real estate. But there's another kind of inheritance, and that's traits and examples. Examples of those traits can include things like hair color, texture, eye color, skin tone. Those are all physical, as well as blood type and even various diseases, which are chiefly genetic. But inheritance happens at a time in your life that you have very little control over. Generally, for most people, it's being born. And then they have the advantage of having this inheritance. And many people have leveraged that inheritance to be a huge blessing in their lives. I wonder if disposition or knowledge or a way of life can be inherited. Because I can remember once I went to the nursing home and I asked my mom, did you ever worry about raising your family without any money? And she told me no, she never did worry about that. And I thought, how could that be possible? This must be the dementia that's setting in for her to make an answer like that. But she lived a very frugal life. Most of her early years was during the Depression. And during the Depression, there was, no one had they didn't have anything. She told me a story about that she could go to the chicken coop and steal an egg, take it down to Allen Mercantile and trade it for a Hershey bar, which, she thought she was one of the richest people in the world. But I know that she lived a life of frugality, and I hope that maybe that's one trait that I can inherit. Another story that she told me in the nursing home, now I wasn't there, so if I get this a little bit wrong, forgive me, this is secondhand information, but she said that when her mother was in the nursing home, and she was frail, and she was in a wheelchair, and she had failing eyesight, that her son Roy came and got down on his knees, and right in front of the wheelchair, he says, "Do you know who I am?" And her answer was, "Don't you know who you are?" So that's my question for you. Is that, do you know who you are? You are a son or a daughter of a loving God. You have DNA from ancestors that found the restored gospel and who sacrificed for that restored gospel. You have inherited traits that give you strength and that give you wisdom. I'm sure grateful for the inheritance that I've received. And I'm leaving my testimony of it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
There is peace in Christ when we learn of Him. Feel the love He felt for us when He bore our sins. Listen to His words, let them come alive. if we know him as he is, there is peace in Christ. He gives us hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. There is peace in Christ when we walk with him through the streets of Galilee to Jerusalem. And the broken hearts dry the tear-filled eyes. When we live the way he lived, there is peace in Christ. Gives us hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ. He gives us hope when hope is gone. He gives us strength when we can't go on. He gives us shelter in the storms of life. On earth, there is peace in Christ. When there's no peace on earth, there is peace in Christ.
Brothers and sisters, I greatly appreciate the music and the words that have been spoken today. First, I'll let you know that my wife, Melody, she was a minister and visiting teacher for Lila for quite a few years. And so I had the chance to, go do errands for my wife, take things. My children and I go over and visit Lila quite often. And she always would greet us at the door with a smile and invite us in and talk to us, and always full of energy and just a pleasure to talk to her. And I remember one day she met us at the door with brown fudge all over her fingers, and she invited us in and sat down and shared some fudge with us, and it was delicious. And I appreciated that. Probably don't know me very well, but I'll just share this a little bit with you. This morning was one of those days, and I got up hectic morning. My wife's out of town. She's in Scottsdale visiting a friend and getting the kids out the door. Had a couple of very difficult surgeries to perform at the hospital, and some very concerned parents of the children I was treating, and with the impending funeral to come and be a part of today. And I just felt very rushed and kind of in commotion. and being here today and listening to your faithful remarks and your wonderful music has truly brought the peace of the gospel and the Spirit into my heart today, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Share a scripture with you, and I truly appreciate the musical selection by Sister King, Peace in Christ, because I think this is where we truly find peace in our life. And it says, it's from John chapter 14, verse 27. It says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, that give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." And I truly feel that peace here with your faithful brothers and sisters and faithful family here to remember a faithful sister, Sister Cook. I do want to give a little bit of time to President Christensen, give him a few minutes to make some remarks. Before I do that, I do want to recognize a few individuals. Our pallbearers today, our brother Ryan Cook, brother Mike Martineau, brother Richard Cook, Stephen Cook, brother David Allen Harmon II, and David Allen Harmon III, brother Andy Olson, and brother Gary Olson. And I do all want to also acknowledge and thank the members of the Hillcrest 2nd Ward Relief Society and Elders Club for all their efforts in helping with getting things ready today. After President Christensen's remarks, we will have a musical selection by Brother Kirk Olson, and then we will have our benediction by Brother Richard Cook.
Thank you, Bishop. I appreciate that. And members here of Lila's family, thanks for letting me insert myself into the program for just a moment. I had the absolute pleasure of serving as Sister Lila's bishop for about 5.5 years, and what a treat it was. And getting to know Alan in particular and Bob, and I appreciate who they are. It was a sweet thing for me as Sister Cook's bishop to receive on a regular basis a tithing check in the mail. And I know that her sons had something to do with that, but that represented her faithfulness. There's a reason that there is a sweet spirit here today. And that is because of faithfulness to the gospel of Jesus Christ. What a beautiful daughter of God we have here, and a disciple of Christ. Before I share maybe just a couple of thoughts in that regard, I do have to tell one story. And there are several I was telling Alan that I could tell, and I'll save most of those. I have a few of them in my journal. One Christmas, Bishop Fryer here, who was my counselor at the time, and another counselor, we went visiting some members of the ward, and we took some loaves of bread, and Sister Lila was one of those visits we decided to make. And so we knocked on her door, and it was cold, and it was one of those Cache Valley winter nights. And we took the bread to her home, and she answered the door, and we had a nice little chat. But the peculiar thing about that was, maybe not so peculiar, but it was unique. She answered the door in leopard print pajamas. And after we had our brief conversation, so it didn't get too cold, we told her we loved her and said goodnight. And I said, "By the way, Sister Lila, I love your pajamas." And she says, "I know, they're hot." And she meant it. And what a sweet memory. And my children, like Bishop Fryer's, have good memories of providing some service there. And about 10, 12 years ago, we had the Melchizedek priesthood brothers in the ward up on her roof and replacing that roof, and how sweet it was to have her come out and check on us. And now, don't you fall down off of my roof. And I think it was because she didn't want to clean up the mess. But what a sweet sister. You know, we spend, I think, very little time, maybe too little time, definitely in the first maybe 90% of our lives, thinking about the funeral is going to look like, sound like, feel like, who's going to be there, what's going to be said. And perhaps we ought to rethink that. Maybe we should spend a little bit more time thinking about the end from the beginning. And please be aware of what it looks like and sounds like and feels like here. It's a good opportunity to examine who we are, Brother Bob. I appreciate the memories that have been shared and the doctrine that has been shared by these two faithful sons. Just one last note in that regard. We talk a lot about the covenant path. As I was walking through and talking with a few members of the family just prior to this meeting before Sister Cook's casket was closed, and saw her there in her, faithfully there in her temple robes. I thought, okay, well, this is the completion, at least here, of her covenant path. Brothers and sisters, if you're struggling with that, it's okay, you're in good company. Because we all do. The point is to get back on it and to stay on it. We think about the principles of the gospel, and oftentimes we forget about that last one, which is enduring to the end. And this good Sister Lila has done that. Think as King Benjamin taught his people about the blessed and happy state of those who keep the commandments of God. And that's what we're experiencing here today. I add my testimony to that. I'm thankful for our Savior and for her example of living a faithful life and being obedient to Him. And I share that in His name, Jesus Christ.
I hope you'll forgive me for just making a few comments. Sorry. I just wanted to pay tribute to my sweet Aunt Lila. So, my mother is Dorothy, who's the youngest of 9 siblings in the family, the youngest sibling of Aunt Lila. And we grew up in Hiram, just next to the house that they all grew up in, my grandma's house, where my sister Camille and her husband Todd live now. So we interacted with the Cook family frequently. They would come over and join us for Christmas Eve, for General Conference weekend, just many activities. And my cousins, Alan and Dan, and Bob and Vicky, Bob and Carolyn, were just some of my favorite friends growing up, and just meant so much to me. And I do want to say something about that family. Alan mentioned the business that he started, and that he and Bob ran for a while. And they hired me to work for them. And we sold Apple II computers right as that industry began. And I worked for Bob later on in another couple of companies. And that was foundational to my entire career. So, I want to pay tribute to Aunt Lila, who, as Alan mentioned, was very gifted on the piano and could play by ear like no one I've ever known. And she had a great influence on me. I started playing the piano at the age of 6, and every time I went over her house, she'd encourage me to play, and she would play, and she'd come over to her house and play, and she really had an impact on me in playing the piano. And I do have to tell one quick story, sorry, but we had a Christmas Eve program, and our tradition at our house was we'd have some dinner, and we'd do the nativity, but we'd have a musical program, and people would prepare a little music to play. And Aunt Lila, of course, could play by ear, so she would get up and just start playing. And on particular Christmas Eve, she was playing, and it was going a little long, and Bob was sitting next to me. Sorry, Bob. But he leans over and he says, "Start clapping and she'll stop." And it's all in good fun. I mean, we all just loved her so much. And she had a great impact on my life, and I think of the legacy that a person leaves. And Aunt Lila always had a smile and a laugh. And not everybody's happy all the time. That's not how life works. But you knew she loved you. And look at her 4 kids. What are they like? The same. There's a reunion in heaven happening with Aunt Lila and my mother and their parents. And all the other siblings that passed along, except for Uncle Roy. We're so glad you're here, Uncle Roy. That reunion is possible because of our Savior Jesus Christ. He overcame physical and spiritual death. So I'd like to play a number that pays tribute to our Savior, called O Divine Redeemer.
Our Father in heaven, our hearts are very full today as we meet here to honor the life of our beloved grandmother, mother, and the beautiful life that she led. We thank you so much for the feeling of love that abides here and for all of the friends and family that have gathered. We ask a special blessing on those that were not able to attend here today, but are here in spirit, that we can convey to them our appreciation for their love that we share together. Father, we also ask thee that we will remember the life of Grandma, and that we will honor her by the way that we conduct our lives. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.